What if a colonial power just made up a rule that said, hey, we're the supreme authority here, so we can take any kingdom we want? And what if a queen looked that power right in the eye and said, not on my watch? Well, that's exactly the story we're diving into today.
To really get a handle on this incredible clash, we've got to jump back to the early 19th century, because that's when a new player arrived on the scene in India, and he was about to change the game completely.
So this is Lord Hastings. When he shows up as Governor General in 1813, he isn't there to just, keep things calm. Britain was feeling pretty confident after the Napoleonic Wars, and they were ready to tighten their grip on their empire. Hastings' whole deal was what he called a vigorous forward policy, which is basically a fancy way of saying, we're done playing nice. It was all about aggressive, full-steam-ahead expansion.
And man, he did not waste any time. Just look at this timeline. In just 5 years, he went to work taking down the major powers that stood in Britain's way. First up, the Anglo-Nepal War. Then he delivered the final, knockout blow to the Maratha Confederacy. By 1819, the path was pretty much clear for total British control.
But winning on the battlefield wasn't the whole story. To really make this stick, they needed an idea, a sort of legal cover for all this conquest. And that's where this doctrine of paramountcy comes into play.
And this was their big idea, the policy of paramountcy. Honestly, it's a pretty audacious claim. The East India Company, which remember started as a trading company, just declared that its power was paramount or supreme. That means they were officially saying their authority was greater than any Indian king or prince.
So what did this actually mean in the real world? Well, this quote right here says it all. If you believe your power is supreme, then anything you do to protect your own interests, like say just taking over an entire kingdom, is justified. It was basically a blank check for annexation whenever and wherever they wanted.
Okay, so how does a policy like this actually play out for people on the ground? Well, this new doctrine was about to get its first real test, and it came from a small kingdom in modern-day Karnataka and its absolutely incredible queen.
This is Rani Chennamma. She became the Queen of Kittur, and by all accounts, she was a respected and capable leader. But fate was about to put her on a direct collision course with the most powerful trading company and empire on the planet.
So the whole thing kicks off with a personal tragedy. In 1824, the queen's only son dies. So following custom, she adopts a young boy, Shivalingappa, to be the next heir. But the British saw this as their chance. They refused to recognize the adoption, used their new paramountcy policy to declare the throne empty, and issued a brutal order: kick the boy out and hand the kingdom over to us.
Yeah, the British thought this would be easy. They were about to find out just how wrong they were. An order from them was one thing, but enforcing it against a queen who was not about to back down, that was something else entirely.
Rani Chennamma's response: absolutely not. She didn't just refuse the order, she took up arms against the East India Company. In an incredible act of courage, she decided to lead an armed resistance herself to protect her kingdom. And you won't believe what happened next. In that first revolt, in October 1824, the impossible happened. Kittur won. They actually defeated the company's forces. It was a massive victory and a huge embarrassment for the British. But the victory didn't last. The company came back, this time with a much larger army, and after a hard fight, the queen was captured.
And that's where her personal fight, sadly, came to an end. She would never be free again. Rani Chennamma died in a British prison on February 21, 1829. But her defiance, that was a different story.
For the rest of her life, she was held captive at Balehungal Fort. Just imagine that, a queen, a warrior, a leader, held as a prisoner by the very power she had dared to challenge. Her spirit, though, was never broken.
So you might be thinking, well, she lost in the end. But here's the thing. Her story was far from over. In fact, her defeat planted the seeds for a legacy of resistance that would last for generations.
So why is her story so important? For starters, she was one of the very first female rulers to lead an actual armed rebellion against the British. She was a pioneer. Her victory, even though it was temporary, completely shattered the idea that the British were invincible. And that's why, even today, she's remembered as a celebrated folk hero in Karnataka.
And her legacy, it was immediate. The fire she lit didn't go out with her. After she was captured, one of her top lieutenants, Sangoli Rayana, kept the fight going with guerrilla warfare. He carried that torch of freedom for Kittur right up until his own capture.
The story of Rani Chennamma is such a powerful reminder that the fight for freedom in India started long before the famous names we all know from the 20th century. And it really makes you stop and think, doesn't it? How many other stories like hers, how many other early heroes who stood up against impossible odds are still out there, just waiting for us to find them?